Hey, and g'day. How is everybody? I hope this finds you well, and I want to thank you for listening in from wherever and whenever you're doing so. I'm your host, Darren, and this is Season 2, Episode number 12 of my Guest List Pod. And today, it's another show in the interview series. If you're new to the show, this is how it works. Each episode, I invite a guest creator onto the show, and we count down a top 10 list in a topic of their choosing. Along the way, we take breaks and ask them questions to delve a little deeper into their world and get to know them and their work a little better. If you'd like to get in touch with the show, you can find me at my Guest List Pod pretty much everywhere you look. I would have to say that Instagram is still my go-to platform at the moment, so drop me a hi or a message, and if you're tuning in for the first time, let me know what you think of the show. So, before we get to this week's interview, I think I might give you some perspective on why I approached these guys to be on my show in the first place. Bear with me, I won't go on for too long. Now, outside of my family and close friends, most people won't know that I was raised by my grandparents my entire life. I'm talking home from the hospital straight to their place until they both passed away when I was in my 20s. And I consider myself to be very fortunate to have had the upbringing that I did, as it was both loving and nurturing, and my grandparents were fantastic people. Now, my grandfather in particular was someone that, when I was young, really encouraged me to investigate a multitude of topics and explore the world through books. It was a different time though, so with no internet, YouTube or Insta stories to look at, no Wikipedia or Google to refer to, Encyclopedia Britannica was your reference guide in those days, and it covered everything from the sciences, history, English, culture. Everything was in those books from A to Z, and a full set of those wasn't cheap. But books were always seen as an investment in our house, and you could also pay them off, which is what we did. So my grandfather loved reading, language, and had travelled the world, mostly because he was in the Navy for a good part of his life, and that included the Second World War. He was a voracious reader, which made him easy to buy presents for at Christmas and birthdays, because I pretty much always bought him books. But if it wasn't books, it was crossword puzzles. He had a broad vocabulary and did crosswords faster than anyone I knew. I don't think I can remember him not ever completing one. If he started it, he finished it. And it was through listening to him that I probably learnt more, especially in the early years of my schooling, than I did at school. As such, when I came across the show that is the focus of today's interview, I was immediately reminded of three things. One, my grandfather and how much he would have enjoyed this podcast. Two, that this had been one of the ideas I had had for a show way back when I was thinking about starting a podcast, and how happy I was that someone had manifested the idea and that they had done such a great job with it. And three, I wish these guys had been around back when I was young to give me some very important knowledge that I recently learned from listening to their show. You see, my grandmother often told me to just pick one sport or hobby and to concentrate on it. Otherwise, I would end up being a jack of all trades and master of none. Little did either of us know that the full idiom is actually jack of all trades, master of none, better than master of one. Now, I can't guarantee it would have changed my grandmother's attitude, but at least I would have had a comeback for her, which, now that I think about it, would probably have only gotten me in more trouble for answering back. But it would have been fun to see what would have happened. So clearing that little idiom up for me was actually one of the joys I've had while listening to their show. It's been a very worthwhile investment. Now, we had a little issue with Skype during this interview, especially with Ethan's feed, but I did my best to clean that up, and I think it's okay. For the most part, things went really well. Anyway, without any more prattling on from me, please sit back, relax, and welcome to the world of Idiots with Idioms.
Crib?
I believe that's street slang for home, sir. An idiom.
Who you calling an idiom?
Joining me this week are the hosts of a very interesting podcast centered around language. In particular, those everyday figurative sayings that permeate most cultures and that are used on a daily basis. The Idiots with Idioms podcast explores the history behind idioms from many countries, and through their show, we discover how different and yet how similar the world's outlook on life can be. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome two people who are definitely not idiots, the hosts with the quotes, the fellows of folk wisdom, the men with the mottos. welcome to my guest list pod, Ethan Arsht and Marcello De Giorgi. How are you, boys?
Good. Thanks for having us, Darren. Looking forward to the show. Yeah, have some good stuff in mind. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, guys. So, Ethan and Marcello, what's the story behind yourself? Like your individual stories, obviously. We'll get to your show in a sec, but tell us who you are, where you're from, bit of background on who you are.
Yeah, I'm a start. Hi, Darren. Thank you for having us. We're both excited to be on your show. My name is Marcello De Giorgi. I'm Italian, as you may have guessed from my accent. I've been working on it for the last 30 years of my life. And I'm from a city called Ferrara, which is a small city, a really beautiful one, close to Bologna in northern East Italy. Who am I? I'm actually living in Brussels, where I work in communications with mostly with EU institutions and other international organizations. And I am really interested in languages. As a matter of fact, I did all my studies in foreign languages. I studied Russian and American English, and I fell in love with this world of words and grammatical rules and errors, and that is why I was so interested in having a show that speaks about languages and cultures. Ethan, if you like to introduce yourself.
Yeah. So my name is Ethan. I'm from the United States, and so my native language is English and American English. I've lived kind of all over in the U.S., and now, like Marcello, I live here in Brussels, Belgium. And I think one of the things that kind of contributed to the show is that we're both living in Brussels, and Brussels is a place with a lot of languages, right? It's the capital of the European Union, and you get people here from all over. And even within the city, it's already a bilingual city. So it's bilingual Dutch and the other language is French. And then on top of that, you have people here from all over Europe, and then to a lesser extent, but also from all over the world, people from outside of Europe like myself. As far as my day job, it's kind of a thing I think about. I don't do anything. I don't really know much about language. Don't speak any language particularly well other than English. I haven't studied language or linguistics at a high level. I've studied other languages, but I haven't studied linguistics at a level deeper than looking around the internet and reading what I can from articles online. But when I think about that, you don't have to be a linguistic to like talk about language. All of us are experts in language by virtue of using language. And so this is what I tell guests, because whenever I'm talking to a guest before a show, they always say, how can I be the one to represent this language? I'm not a linguist. And it's like, you're not a linguist, but you are an expert at your language. If you speak French every day, you're an expert at French. Like if we look at something like the 10,000 hour rule, you've spent many, many, many more than 10,000 hours speaking French. And so I always have to tell myself that as well, because I am also not formally educated in language or linguistics. But
I think you're completely right there. Like, if you're speaking a mother tongue every day, and you have done that since you were young, obviously, you're going to really be pretty proficient in that language. So you come at it from that perspective. And then when you're looking at other people's languages and other people's cultures and the way that they use their idioms, the way they use their sayings and things like that, this is what I love about your show, the fact you can actually recognize a different way of thinking in terms of the idioms from different countries. They think a different way, and you get to appreciate cultures a lot more by knowing about them and learning about them. And that's what I think your podcast does. It opens people up to the fact that, look, there's a lot of things that are very common and they just say it a different way. And we're virtually all the same, but we just have a different way of saying it. And despite geographical things that may influence some idioms and things like that, like I said, people are pretty much the same the world around. They have the same problems. They have the same issues. So the idioms, even though they might be phrased differently, a lot of times they come out and they mean the same thing though. So, I really enjoy your show. I think it's fantastic, and I look forward to every episode. So I really appreciate you coming on, and thank you for giving me an in-depth background on who you guys are. What I'd like to know actually is how you guys met.
Do you want to take this one, Marcello?
But it's kind of it's not super interesting, but it's kind of easy. I was a friend of Ethan's actual girlfriend, and they started dating during the pandemics, and as soon as they let us out of the cage, we started to see each other.
Okay. And what was that moment that you thought, well, look, let's do a podcast and let's do it about idioms?
That's an interesting story. So, Ethan, if you want to talk about
you
your
go ahead.
moment,
Really,
go ahead.
you're at the center of this one. I'll let you go ahead.
So, completely out of the blue, one day I decided that I wanted to produce a podcast. I actually had done a podcast before in Italian about Russian music, but I was the producer. So I would get all the recordings. I will do all the work on it, and the speakers and the people that were doing all the research were two friends of mine. So I did this first experience, and I thought, okay, I really like this. I just want to do a podcast. I didn't know what kind of podcast. I just knew that I wanted to do a podcast, and that is why we have a jingle at the end of our show with me being an idiot with idioms and playing and singing. I just wanted to do a podcast with my friends. Mm-hmm. So I started asking. I had Ethan in my mind, but I started asking around. I don't know. I had many ideas, and then one evening we were just chatting. And Ethan had also experience in radio and broadcasting, and it was really good. And we were into this conversation about idioms, Italian idioms and English ones, and how come that they were close to each other. And I started recording without saying it to anyone. And then I listened to it, and then I said, okay, we need to do something about this. This is a nice idea. So we spoke a little bit, and we decided to give it a try.
Okay. Has it been what you expected?
I think so. I think I don't know. If you listen to what I like is if you listen to the first episode, we've gotten much better. I mean, what I think about is I have to be enjoying the conversations on the show. The thing is, if I enjoy the conversations, and they're nice conversations, and the guests also enjoy the conversations, then the job is done, right? Yeah. And if other people listen, that's just a bonus. But I think it has been what we expected. I think we both knew how much work it would be, but we didn't think about how much what that would mean. So I think we were both we both knew, in theory, we could say, okay, this will be X hours per week of work or X hours per month. But in reality, we did not think about the implications of that. I think it's, at least for me, I hadn't thought about exactly what it would be trading off with.
So it's been double the amount of hours you expected, or?
It's been the amount of hours I expected. I just am not good at predicting, not good at taking that concept and actually thinking about how it will affect me, my life and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I think if people were realistic about how much commitment it would be to make a podcast, perhaps no one would ever make an amateur podcast.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you always think, oh, this will be a fun hobby. And it's really it's a hobby that takes a lot from you. I mean,
a lot of time, a lot of work. And I think that's why you see so many podcasts that start and then stop. It's a lot of work. Yeah. So no, I can understand that for sure. All right, look, what I do with my guests, it's pretty much the basic premise for my podcast is to get to know you a little bit more, the hosts behind the show. We like to do a countdown. Generally, I like to get the host to do something that's probably not related to their show as such to give us another aspect of your personality. But to be honest, I'm really happy that you picked the subject that you've chosen because I really enjoy your show and I really want to know what your favorite idioms are as well. So if you want to let everyone know, what's your top 10 countdown for this week? What topic have you chosen to count down?
Well, we're just counting down our top 10 favorite idioms. Yeah. So nothing out of the ordinary for us. But, we I don't know, we've picked up dozens of idioms from different cultures doing the show for the last 8 months now. I don't know. It's nice to actually put them all together and think about which ones really stand out as particularly interesting.
I've seen on your list that you have a couple that have actually been featured on your show. So it's great to see that you've found idioms that are now in your top 10 that you got from doing the show. So why don't we start the countdown with your number 10, your 10th favorite idiom.
Okay, which I think is Days of Smmer.
That's the one.
This was really interesting because it has nothing to do with dogs at all. So this is something we came across while preparing an episode about idioms that come from Latin and ancient Greek. And actually, dog days comes from dies caniculares, which were the days when Sirius, which were referred to as the dog star, appeared to rise before the sun. This is in late July, and for Roman, those days were a particular time of the year because according to their astrology, they might bring fever, mad dogs, and above all, bad luck. So this is something that, okay, it's not used every day, but I knew it from a song. Dog days are over, and I don't know. It was pretty fun for me to get to know what was behind this idiom.
Very good. Anything about it that sticks out in your mind, Ethan, or is this one was Marcello's pick more than yours?
Marcello picked this one, but it's an excellent. It's a really good one, and now I'm thinking like the dog days period just ended, and now I'm thinking we should have done an episode called "The Dog Days of Smmer" during the dog days of summer.
It would have been yes.
Yeah, but next year. The good news is it comes around every year, so
exactly. You only have to wait another 12 months. Catch it next time. Very good. All right, guys, number 9.
If I may, I think that we can mix them because I chose from 5 to 10 and Ethan. So maybe Ethan, you want to go with your number 5, even if we.
Oh yeah, sure. So I'm actually not going to do my number 5 because it's also a Latin one. I'll do it. Pick another one. So I'll mix up the list here.
If that's okay for you, Darren.
No, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me. I'm fine.
Okay, so the one of the idioms I chose was the idiom on the ball. And on the ball means just alert and ready to go. And it's used, I think, primarily in American English. But the reason I really like this idiom is because it's one of the many idioms where the real story is completely boring, but there's a fake story that's fun. And we've had a lot of idioms where like the story for how it comes about is something completely mundane and fairly trivial, but then it's more fun if you just believe the story, the folk story for how it came into existence. So for this one, I'll tell you the real story first. The real story is that it's just probably from baseball, and a player who was on the ball is just a player who is keeping his eye on the ball. Yeah. And in baseball, it's a good idea to keep your eye on the ball in any aspect of the game, right? Hitting, fielding, whatever. Try and watch the ball. The fake story, the good story is that 2 trains crashed together because there was a bad collision. 2 freight trains. It was a terrible collision because one of the train conductors' watch was off, and as a result, the two trains, one of the train was supposed to be clear of that stretch of track. But because his watch was off, he thought it was time for him to go down that stretch of track, and the two trains ended up colliding. And after that, the train company said, okay, there's a real problem with train conductors not knowing what time it was. So they gave all of their train conductors a ball company watch. And if a train conductor was really on the ball, it means they were looking at their watch all the time, paying a lot of attention to their timetable. Of course, that story, I think, is just completely fabricated.
Yeah.
But I like the idea that it came from this ball company watches, and it's a little bit more fun than the other one, I think.
Well, there is another saying as well: never let the truth get in the way of a good story. So,
exactly.
Yeah. So I'll go with that second story as well. That sounds pretty good. Okay, guys. What's your number 7 or your next one, Marcello?
The next one is Stick to Your Guns, which is another one that surprised me because, I'm not an IT speaker. And when I'm thinking about guns, the first image that I have is somebody in a plane fighting a duel, in a Western.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this idiom comes from the word of military, but actually it comes from boats, because on war boats, sailors were supposed not to leave their guns no matter what. Even if the boat was captured, even if the enemy was already, sailing away with their boats, they should have stayed there. And this is an expression that, okay, nowadays it's used to, praise determination or courage. And I really enjoyed to find out that it doesn't come from a spaghetti movie, but from history.
Yeah, it's definitely if you stick to your guns, when you say that phrase over here, it means that someone's pretty belligerent about an idea or a thought. Or an opinion. So even in the face of overwhelming evidence, sometimes they stick to their guns. So yeah, we use that a lot over here as well. Okay, Ethan, your next one. So it'd be number 7, but it'd be Ethan's second one. So what's your next one on the list?
Right. So the next one I had is one called From Finish. We did a Finish episode. I think it's the most recent episode we've released.
Yeah.
And I think it's either my favorite or second favorite of the episodes we've done so far. But the idiom that I went with was my land strawberry, other land blueberry. And what this idiom means is you're basically, when I'm at home, I feel like I'm in a place where things are in order and in control. And when I'm anywhere else, when I'm in another country or another place, I feel like things are out of control. I feel like I'm in the wild. And the reason for that is because strawberries grow in cultivated areas and blueberries grow in wild areas. But the reason I really like this is because I always say, like, this is a show about culture and idioms are just an inroad to culture when I talk about idiots with idioms. And there's so much culture wrapped up in this because it shows so much about, like, basically Finnish agriculture tradition and how you would or still to this day actually in Finland, like, everyone is entitled to wild land in Finland. They have a law that basically anyone is allowed to walk or fish or just be among wild land. It can't, even if it's owned by someone, if it's not, like, properly cultivated and actually kind of manicured, then anyone can just do their thing there. And first of all, I find that law very strange, or I guess unusual, coming from, like, the US or kind of this Anglo super property rights oriented society. But also I thought this idiom, which seems so quaint, my land strawberry, other land blueberry, actually has so much sentiment behind it and so much history behind it.
Yeah, look, I must admit, I've listened to actually every one of your episodes. I think they're fantastic, as I said. And I thought this one was particularly good because it really did give us an insight into Finnish culture in terms of the way your guest was talking about how you grow strawberries on your own land, and blueberries would be something that you'd find in the wild or in the open land that's accessible by everyone, so that you knew if you saw strawberries, that was someone's land. And if you saw blueberries, it was indicative of just the wild that is open and accessible. It was every man's law or something like that, I think she called it.
Yeah, it's every man's right.
Yeah, every man's right. That's right. Yeah. So I thought that was fantastic. And it was actually, a really good episode. And there were a lot of other things you actually were talking about in that episode that really gave us an idea of what the Finnish people are like in terms of, being polite and their attitudes to people who speak a lot or talk a lot. So, and it was funny when you were talking to your guest and she was talking about how the Finnish are probably a little bit more reserved. One of the things that came to mind was a saying of an empty vessel makes the most noise. It was something that was told to me by my grandfather when I was young. So when I was probably a little bit more rambunctious and didn't shut up, he used to say, an empty vessel makes the most noise. And when I finally understood what it was, I was like, okay, maybe I should quieten things down. Yeah, it's really good. Your episodes really do prompt a lot of thought, I think, or they should in people. So, all right. So that would be 4 down. Let's do one more, Marcello.
Okay, I'm gonna have to read this before I jump into the idiom.
No worries.
Be stirring as time, be fire with fire, threaten the threatener, and outface the brow of bragging horror. This is the bard in his King John using fire with fire, which is a really great idiom. And compared to the other two that I mentioned before, here it goes the other ways around, because it was not Shakespeare that invented it. So at the beginning I would think that it was something, fire with fire was something as a metaphor, but as a matter of fact, it is something that is actually being done, because a way to prevent fires in forests, so wildfires, would be to deliberately raising small fires, controllable ones,
backburning,
called backfires.
Yeah.
This is something that was done in the past, but it is done also today in order to try to prevent natural disasters. And it was kind of cool for me to see that here, compared to other things in which you don't understand what it is, and then it is a surprise. Here, I thought that it was kind of super easy, because fight fire with fire is a powerful metaphor, is a powerful image. I thought that it came from literature, and that is why I started quoting Shakespeare. But it has a more popular
practical
origin.
sense. Yeah, we do a lot of backburning here in Australia. We have a problem with bushfires, being the land that we are. Our summer seasons get very hot. We have a lot of dry wooded areas and huge swathes of grassland that catch a light very easily. So we do a lot of backburning here. So that's a very practical genesis from that saying. So I didn't realise it actually did come from that. So it makes sense. Like you said, it's pretty simple and it does make sense. So, okay.
So while we're on this, though, it reminds me that we should be doing a Shakespeare episode sooner rather than later, because there's so many idioms still used today
that
come from Shakespeare. I mean, I don't know where to start, because in a pickle is from Shakespeare.
Oh, really? Okay.
Of course, there's more kind of Shakespearean sounding ones, like to be or not to be.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if people still use that idiomatically. But
not to do about nothing.
Right. There's literally dozens still used idioms that are just from Shakespeare. But we'll get to that eventually, I think.
Very good. All right. So we've got Ethan. You've got one more to do, and then we'll take a break.
Great. So the next one I had was the idiom Carpathian hair. And this idiom also comes from our Latin and ancient Greek episode, which was probably the most of the episodes that we've done. That was the most kind of scholarly, I would say. Kind of the guest there was extremely knowledgeable from a linguistic standpoint.
Yeah.
But what I thought was really cool about that is you really learned things in that episode that you couldn't learn from Wikipedia. Like even a determined researcher would not know a modicum of the knowledge that our guest in that episode brought. Our guest was Federico, and he introduced us to this idiom, the Carpathian hair, which just means a situation that's out of control. And so I guess if you think of the geography of ancient Greece, you had ancient Greece sort of to the south, and then the Carpathian Mountains to the north in modern day Romania. And I guess the idea was a hare, the animal, a hare is kind of out of control, and a hare from Carpathia, or back then what would have been considered a barbarian land, was particularly tough to rein in. So I really like this idiom though, and as a result, one of the missions of Idiots with Idioms is to bring this idiom back into the lexicon.
And I've been
someday when we have, thank you, when we have, it's also the official mascot of the show.
Oh, very good.
When we have, someday people will be saying Carpathian hair to mean a situation that's out of control.
That's a t-shirt.
And then on another show, and then years down the road, when there's another show that's also talking about idioms, they'll say, believe it or not, the origin of this idiom came from a podcast about idioms. That's the idea.
Yeah. That was a great episode too, and the fact that he explains how the hares on the island just bred until they were out of control and sort of took over. It was interesting, and he was a great guest that you had on, and like you said, he was very, very knowledgeable about everything that he was speaking on, and it was really interesting to listen to. So, all right, guys, let's take a break. I'll let you get a drink of water, and we'll come back with some more questions. As a new podcaster, one of the annoying things I have found about trying to collect the reviews you get for your show is that Apple, for example, only show you the reviews you get in the iTunes store of the country that the review is made in. So if someone reviews my show in Canada, I won't even know they've reviewed unless they tell me. And I won't be able to see the review unless I log into that country's iTunes page. And honestly, that sounds like a lot of hard work. However, I recently signed up for a service that aggregates all of your ratings and reviews from a number of sources and displays them for you all in one place. Not only that, but they also offer a link for your podcast that automatically displays only the rating and review platforms compatible with your listener's device. So people don't have to wonder or search for how and where they can rate and review your show. Go check out mypodcastreviews.com. And I'd be grateful if you could please use my affiliate link when you join to let them know who sent you. It's in the show notes. And if you want to rate and review my show, you can go to lovethepodcast.com/myguestlistpod. Now back to the countdown. And we're back with Ethan and Marcello from Idiots with Idioms. And we are up to Marcello. I think it's your turn in terms of your favorite idiom. One of your favorite idioms?
Indeed it is. This idiom is an American expression, and I really like it because I think that it is little used elsewhere in the English-speaking world, and I find it really, really American. I don't know why. It is just my impression. The idiom is close but not cigar, and it comes from the 1920s, where fairs and carnivals were something for adults and not for kids.
Yeah.
And so they would go and, have those games, and those carnivals would then hand out cigars as prizes. And I don't know. Also, I don't think that elsewhere cigars are so enjoyed as in America, at least from what I've seen in the movies, in the sports culture. I don't know. I wouldn't celebrate with a cigar anything here in Europe. I would open a bottle of wine. So this is why I think it's pretty
more
American.
North American. Yeah. Where did you find that? Was it on the internet or?
I cannot. I need to protect my sources, Darren. I'm sorry.
You can tell me, but
it
you have
was
to
on the
kill me.
internet.
Okay.
No, it was on the internet. There are several websites. It's not so difficult. It takes just a little bit of time, and then there are several websites giving stories about idioms.
Do you have trouble with that when you're trying to find out what the story behind an idiom is? Do you have anywhere that you go to regularly? Because I'm sure there's conflicting stories here and there in terms of ideas behind where the idioms came from. Do you have anywhere in particular that you go to that you think is a genuine, reliable source?
So, for example, I have bought a book about idioms, which is the Oxford Dictionary of Proverbs.
Mm-hmm.
And this is really a great source when you need to see when an idiom was first used in written language.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are several websites that I go through regularly. But I don't know the names. Just let me check.
That's all right. No problem.
So I think the most valuable resource for me it's not, unfortunately, is not a scholarly resource, but is english.stackexchange.com, which is just a forum.
Yep.
If you know, and like Stack Exchange is a network of forums about is a network of forums, and this one is just about idioms or words in English, and the people on there, first of all, there's lots of smart people on there talking about idioms, but second of all, they often link to more scholarly sources.
Okay.
So kind of just, I would say crowdsourcing is the way that we would typically get to the bottom of these. I would say just more often than not, like, we can't say definitively where an idiom comes from. Actually, when we can actually find a definitive story, I think it's quite a relief. And usually we just have to say, like, there's several possibilities.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
This is something that we have been omitting, because otherwise we would have to start every time saying the origin of this idiom is not certain, but it is normal. I found a website that I wanted to mention because I think that they're doing a great job, and it is theidioms.com, which is a great source, I would say. They've been doing a great job. And
okay.
Whenever I want to look for an idiom, I go through the website as well to have an additional source.
So what people should be doing, though, is just forgetting that and going straight to your podcast.
Yes, we will be your researchers.
Exactly.
If you submit an idiom to us,
you will do all the hard work.
Any media will track it down for you.
All right, no worries. All right, Ethan, your next one, please.
Alrighty. The next one I had was one. So I wanted to use an idiom that I actually use in conversation a lot, and so one that I use is cooking with gas. And actually, normally you would say, now we're cooking with gas. And what it means is, like, now things are really heating up, or now things are going well. The reason I really like this idiom, I've used it like for a long time, probably like most of my life. But we were recently researching idioms that come from corporate stuff. So idioms that come from commercials or advertising campaigns, basically. And this came from an advertising campaign where the natural gas lobby of the U.S. tried to get comedians, and mostly comedians, to say the phrase "now we're cooking with gas" during their comedy routines. Okay. And it was as part of this huge push in the 1950s to get people to switch to gas stoves. Okay. And first of all, it was an extremely successful advertising campaign. So they managed to establish gas as like a really good method of cooking. But at the same time, they also managed to establish this idiom, now we're cooking with gas. I think it first appeared in the early 40s, and then it actually really caught on in the 50s. It's not used as much today. I'm trying my best to keep it going, but it's kind of falling out of favor as an idiom. But I really enjoy the story behind it.
Well, you'd be surprised. We actually use that in Australia a fair bit. Well, not a fair bit, but we do use it. It's still part of common day language, I guess, and everyday language.
I would believe that totally. I would believe it's more popular in Australia than the US. So
yeah,
cool.
we're a long way from everywhere, and things sometimes take a little bit longer to get here. So. So anyway, Marcello, I think it's up to you now for your next idiom.
Yes, thank you, Darren. This is my last one, and it's my favorite because it was, I think, the first one that I looked for when we started our podcast, and it is beat around the bush, which is an idiom that comes from the medieval times. And it comes from hunting. Hunting was a popular sport at the time. We're talking about the 15th century. And rich people, they would hire men to actually go and beat around the bush in order to scare birds that would hide in the forest. So these men had like sticks, and they would just go and try to scare the prize of the hunting.
Yeah.
But while doing so, they could scare something more scary than birds, like wild boars, for example.
Yeah.
And this is why some of them would not put a particular effort in in beating the bushes.
And
this is where this is where the idiom generated, no? So it now means avoiding the main point in the conversation, or failing to get what the things are about, either by accident or on purpose. It comes from the fact that there were scared people in the Middle Age not wanting to die for rich people.
Yeah, not wanting to beat around the bush and flush something out that may actually, debowel them. So, yeah, I can understand that. Oh, very good. All right, so that's beat around the bush. So I guess we have got the last one, and that would be Ethan's.
Right. So the last one that I went with was the expression out of left field. So this was one that came up in the short baseball episode that Marcello and I did a few months ago. But what it means is, and I had no idea about this until we did this episode, what it means is that at the old baseball stadium of the Chicago Cubs, so the Chicago Cubs have played in one baseball stadium for, I think, over 100 years, called Wrigley Field. But before that, they played in a baseball stadium called the West Side Grounds. And directly behind the left field fence of the stadium was a mental hospital. And so if something really crazy happened, it was out of left field because it came out of the mental hospital. Now, of course, like many idioms, this has, I'm sure, very problematic ableist questions raised by it.
Yeah.
That said, I think it's a really fun idiom because you'd think it'd be something kind of more, I don't know. My assumption was that it would be something more germane to baseball, but it was actually like, oh, it came out of left field. It came out of it's insane. It came out of the mental hospital. Yeah.
There are a lot of good puns in that episode as well. Even Marcello, he used the expression, he threw you a curveball here and there, and there are a lot of baseball puns in that episode. It was actually, it was funny. It was a bit corny, but funny, but it was good. No, it was enjoyable. So, guys, well, that's it. That's your top 10. So that's pretty good. So we did it a little bit different than we normally do. Instead of a normal countdown, we gave us your top 5 each, which was great. That's really good, and they were really enjoyable. What I'd like to do now is actually just ask you some more questions about your own interests and things like that. So, apart from doing the podcast and traveling back and to and from Italy to Brussels and America to Brussels, what other interests do you guys have in terms of sports, or what else are you interested in other than idioms?
You can go first, Marcello.
Okay. I would say, like, in terms of sports, I'm a huge soccer fan.
Mm-hmm.
a little bit too much of a soccer fan lately. I've been supporting Inter Milan and not losing a single game in the last couple of years. And I like to read and to play team sports when it was doable. Let's see if we can come back to the time.
Yeah. Now I'm interested. You call it soccer. How come you don't call it football? Because I thought only Australians were the people that called it soccer.
This was out of respect for Ethan. If it was not there, I would have said football.
It's very kind of you, Marcello. How about you, Ethan? What other interests do you have?
I also enjoy football, but football the way Marcello means soccer. So I really like. I'm a fan of Tottenham Hotspur. Okay. So yeah. I've embraced a life of sadness. And another thing I like to do, I don't know, a fun little hobby I have is I like to make maps. I like to design and do like some amateur cartography. Yeah. Is something I like.
Fantastic. Yeah. Oh, that's good. My grandfather was actually interested in cartography as well. That can be an all-encompassing hobby. So it takes up a lot of time to do it properly. So, yeah, that's good. What do you guys generally watch in terms of are you big Netflix guys or do you prefer reading? And if you do, what sort of genres are you interested in? Sci-fi, horror?
I have started a personal battle with Netflix because they have some good shows, but I have to spend too much time looking for them. Okay. So I'm really angry at them. But lately I haven't been seeing, it's summer. I've been enjoying the time out of my house. So
yeah.
But I used to be really into Russian literature. I used to study Russian during my bachelor's degree. I started a project about Russian culture, which is called the Russian Translation, where we translate Russian articles into Italian. And yeah, I was really into that. Now I slowed down a little bit. I stepped out of my little Russian yard. But yeah, it is still a passion, I would say.
Okay, very good. And yourself, Ethan?
Yeah, I'm the opposite of Marcello. I'm a Netflix and other streaming services addict. Right now I'm not watching much of anything, but basically if you put any Marvel content in front of me, I'll watch all of that. Okay. I'll rewatch old stuff. I'll watch whatever garbage is out there. It's not healthy.
Yes.
No one's happy about this.
I understand. But with lockdown, it's one of those things, I guess, that it's become a big part of everyone's life. I think Netflix, Prime, Amazon Prime, Binge, Stan, all those streaming services are making a killing because there's not much else to do while you're in lockdown. So very good. Now, the other thing I'm always interested in is with podcasters, what other podcasts do you listen to?
I can go. Can you hear me?
Yeah, for sure.
Yes, you're good.
Okay, I can go ahead. I would like to mention two podcasts which I really like. Mm-hmm. The first one is 99% Invisible.
Yes.
Which is a great show, which is supposed to be about design, but it is about design in its broader conception. So, for example, you would have really different content every time. For example, design about a city, design about a specific tool, something that comes out of natural disasters. And they've been running the show for quite a long time now, and it's really well done. Mm-hmm. I would recommend it. And another one that I listen to, which is a show of I think 6 or 7 episodes, and then it has a conclusion. Let's say, is Wind of Change. It is a podcast about this guy that heard about another guy that used to work for CIA that apparently the rock band Scorpions could have been an American spy band, basically trying to influence Soviet Russia with the song "Winds of Change."
Okay.
And it's really good. There's a lot of tension. I'm not going to tell you how it finishes, but
Good.
I would recommend it.
Okay, I'll give it a listen. I'm big into audio dramas myself, so and I like to listen to something that's a little bit left of center. So that sounds just up my alley, actually. So I'll give it a listen. Ethan, do you listen to podcasts a lot yourself?
I do. There are two that I will kind of just throw out there quickly. Also, one I'll speak about very quickly because I'm sure many podcast enthusiasts will already be familiar with it, but it's called The Sporkful, and it's a show by Dan Pashman, and it's a show about food. But the reason I really like it, the reason I listen to it is because it gives me some inspiration for Idiots with Idioms, because it's a show about food, but it's really a show about culture, and food is just an inroad to culture. And of course, I always say Idiots with Idioms is a show about culture and language is an inroad. And another podcast, though, that maybe is a bit less prominent is called Literature and History, which is a podcast by a fellow named Doug Metzger. And this is a fantastic podcast that contextualizes historical pieces of literature in their time frame.
Okay.
And you can understand it. It adds to your understanding of the historical work by explaining basically what was going on in the world at that time.
Okay.
So if you've read the Iliad, for instance, you'll enjoy it even more with this historical background involved.
Okay. Do you actually listen to Dan Carlin, Hardcore History?
Yes.
Yeah.
Although it's something you have to sit down for a long time for those.
Oh yeah.
Literature and history is also episodes of literature history are also pretty long, but not the 5-hour ones that Dan Carlin sometimes does.
Yeah, I must admit I love Dan Carlin's show, and I remember listening to the Cuban Missile Crisis show, and he said that was originally going to be 2 hours, and it ended up being 6 hours. And I listened to that while I was driving on a country trip, and it was the only podcast I listened to actually because it took so long. But yeah, I really do enjoy his shows as well. So, but I'll give that literature and history a listen as well. So that sounds like something I'd be very interested in, and I'm always looking for new stuff. So that's great, guys. Why don't we take another quick break, and then we'll be back with something that we didn't quite get to work out what we were going to do for a game, but I've come up with something that I think you might enjoy. So we'll take a quick break and be back with that in a sec. Okay, and we're back, and everyone is well hydrated and ready to go. And Marcello and Ethan have no idea what's in store for them now, but that's okay. What I've got for you is I've got a little list of sayings that they're not uniquely Australian, but we do use them a bit, and we have put our own spin on them. And I want you to see if you can work out from the saying or the idiom that I've got what it's referring to. Does that sound okay?
Sounds great.
All right.
Yeah, brilliant.
All right, no worries. All right. Well, the first one I've got for you is he's got a few roos loose in the top paddock. A few roos loose in the top paddock. Or another way of saying it would be he's a few stubbies short of a six-pack.
Okay, this is the equivalent of he has a few screws loose, like
exactly
he's
right.
a little bit off. That's
Yes.
fantastic. That is really, yeah, that's good.
I must admit, I do like that one because they've put a very Australian spin on it with the kangaroos. Marcello, if you don't know, we call kangaroos abbreviate kangaroos into roos. So there's a couple of roos over there. It just means there's a couple of kangaroos over there. And so if you're a few roos loose in the top paddock, there's a few kangaroos going nuts up in his brain area sort of thing. So he, like Ethan said, he's a few screws loose.
Yeah.
So that's the first one.
Okay.
All right. So the second one is blow the froth off a few. So to blow the froth off a few. So where do you get froth on what sort of a
yeah, okay. You're cooling down your coffee.
No,
Perhaps.
What else has froth on it?
Well, there's milk
that you drink.
There's froth. And beer.
That Australians are very well known for.
Yeah. Is it beer?
It's beer. Yeah. So to blow the froth off a few is to have a few beers, to have a couple of beers. So to blow the froth off a few.
Yeah, where they're spilling, you have to remove it.
Yeah, that's all right. So that's that one. You look like a dog's breakfast.
This seems kind of, self-explaining, right?
Pretty much, yeah. So dogs, when they wake up, they're pretty hungry and they go nuts with their food.
You don't look nice. You look sick.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah, exactly right. When you look like a dog's breakfast, well, dogs, when they wake up and they attack their food, the food goes everywhere. So it's just exactly right. You look dishevelled. You don't look very good. So you're right. Here's look. Now this one you should be able to work out from the reference in the actual saying. Wrap your laughing gear around this. To wrap your laughing gear around that.
Oh boy, I don't know. These are tough.
Sorry, guys, I didn't mean to.
Awkward silence. Awkward silence.
So, what's your laughing gear? What do you laugh with?
You're making us look really bad, Darren.
Fantastic. It means to try something. That's great.
Yeah, so to drink or to eat something is to wrap your laughing gear around it. So if we have something, for example, that this is a great beer, wrap your laughing gear around that. So we're offering you to have a drink or to eat something. So
that's I love that. That's such an optimistic idiom that it implies that the main purpose of your mouth is to laugh. What a fantastic outlook on life.
Yeah, it's not too bad. I don't mind. It's very Australian sort of thing in terms of the attitude behind it, I guess. So, okay, let's have a look at this one. So he's running around like a blue-ass fly. So we have a lot of
Isn't
flies.
It like running circles or?
Yeah, well, yeah, pretty much.
Getting to the point.
He's running around in a manic way. Our flies just are non-stop here in Australia when they're in the summer, and they fly everywhere and anywhere, and to run around like a blue-ass fly is to run around in all different directions without any purpose or without any sort of plan, and that's pretty much to run around like a blue-ass fly. So yeah. For everyone out there listening, I did not prepare the guys at all and give them any idea of what was coming on. So they are probably a little bit hard if you don't speak Australian English or what we call strine. So I've got a couple more. Do you want to do a couple more?
Yeah, why not?
Go ahead. Okay. Go ahead. Let's give it a try.
All right, no worries. So to spit the dummy.
All right, leave this to Ethan.
I don't know where to start with this one. You have to tell us. This is
all right.
Yeah.
So to spit the dummy is to another way of saying it in Australian would be to crack the shits or to have a tantrum. So as a baby has a dummy or a pacifier. We call it a dummy. So when they get really upset, they spit their dummy out and they have a tantrum. So if someone you see the tennis players all of a sudden go nuts and throw their tennis rackets on the ground, we'd say he's spitting a dummy. So that's
great. This just shows how desperately we have to do an Australian English episode for our show. Somehow it's eluded us so far. But
Well, maybe we don't use them all up here then. We'll save some for that.
good idea.
All right, no worries. All right, guys, look, that's pretty much it. We've had your top 10, and I'll put that in the show notes so anyone can go back and have a look at that. That's 5 from Ethan and 5 from Marcello. And I want to say thank you very much for coming on. I really appreciated all the fantastic communication between you guys when I approached you. I didn't know how I would be received. I was really hoping that you would want to come on, and it's been fantastic. And I really appreciate everything, all the effort that you've put in. And the idioms were fantastic, and your show is fantastic every week. And I encourage everyone to go out and listen to it, even if you have a modicum of interest in sayings and idioms and other people's languages, and you learn so much from about other cultures with your show, which is another byproduct of the show, which is fantastic. So if you'd like to tell everyone where they can get in contact with you and listen to your show and give everybody your socials, that'd be fantastic.
Thank you, Darren. It was really great to be part of your show. We had a great time. And I'm going to leave this part about the social to Ethan because he's the good go-to guy for this kind of announcements.
No worries.
Okay, yeah, thanks very much, Darren. You can check us out at our Instagram is Idiots with Idioms. Our Facebook is Idiots with Idioms. Our Twitter is Idiots W Idioms. So idiots, the letter W, idioms. You can also get us at idiotswithidioms@gmail.com. But the best way is just to listen to the show, and then we'll re-announce our socials on every show. And so if you ever forget, just give us more listens and follow and subscribe to us, and then you'll get a chance to get in touch with us.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks for that. Look, guys, I'll let you get back to your day. Marcello, I know you've just flown in from Italy. So again, thank you very much for making the time. You're probably a bit tired, but thank you very much for making the time. And Ethan, thank you very much as well. Guys, I'd love to do a follow-up episode with you one day as well, once you get some more episodes under the belt. And maybe we can come up with some other idioms as well for another top 10, or we could count down something else. But either way, I'll be listening to your show. Don't worry about that. That's for sure. I'll keep up with you guys on the social media and see you then.
See you around, Darren.
Thank you.
All right, guys.
See you.
All right, bye. That's it for another week. I hope you enjoyed the show, and I encourage you to give the guys a listen, even if you have the slightest interest in sayings, idioms, and the like. I'd also love to chat with Ethan and Marcello again in the future, and I think if we do a flip show like they suggested, where I'm the guest, it could be a fun episode. Fun, but also maybe unintelligible for them considering how we went with the game. If you did enjoy my show, please subscribe to the feed so you can get all my interview and review shows, and don't forget to come and say hi on one of the social platforms. Remember, I'm at my guest list pod nearly everywhere you look in the social platform wasteland. Let me know if you're a new listener and tell me what you like and what you think I can improve on. Is the show a complete Carpathian hare? All constructive criticism is welcome. Thank you for giving me some time out of your day once again, and as usual, I'll be back to chat at you again next week.